What's up, family? Welcome back to the Stop Sinking Show, where we go from struggle to flow. I'll quote something I read the other day that has been playing in my head since. I think it sums up the spirit of some of the topics that we've discussed here. Topics that range from setting your own temperature and not being influenced by the environment to topics about relationships and seeing the best in people. The quote goes, "I find good people good, and I find bad people good if I am good enough." Now, we can get into the nuances and lose the point in debating what good and bad means, but let's not do that. Your vague idea of good or a bad person is good enough. We don't need to justify or defend anything to make our point today. I found a new gym when I came back to the States 4 months ago, and I almost on a daily basis on our walk out of there, I am filled with gratitude that I found this place because it is filled with so many beautiful humans who I feel blessed to interact with daily. Almost every day, I walk out saying, how did I get so lucky finding this place? And almost always I have a story from a funny or a deep conversation and interaction that day with someone to reflect on. The one thought that crosses my mind always is, did all the nicest people ever just found this place to be in? It's almost like there isn't one person in there that's not good. And the following comment or thought I always have from that is, you get what you put out. If you are nice to people, they will be nice to you. Now, not that I want to take credit for the beauty that other people hold. Nothing I can do or say can change the years of experiences that shape a person. But what I can take credit for is what I solicit out of them. The only way to solicit anything is by offering it and giving it first. And it doesn't guarantee that you will receive back what you hope for, what you are giving out. But you do make it more likely for people to be at their best when you believe in the existence of best in them, when you know without question that it's there, when you are at your best and you speak to them, you are also more likely to call that best forth. The reality of it all is people are everything. We are all good and we are all bad. We are full spectrum. We are everything. All of us have that potential to be on either side, and none of us are entirely one or the other. And it would be naive to think of yourself or anyone else as entirely good, and possibly dangerous to think that. And it would be emotionally clouded to think of yourself or anyone else as entirely bad. We all have redeeming qualities. So given this reality, the fact that all of this is inside of us, the experience you have with someone is entirely based on what experience you create with someone, not something that is accidental. Now, granted, you might encounter people who naturally lean a certain way, or maybe they're having a good day and their good mood will cause your experience with them to be positive that day. But most of the time, you are getting out of them what you are giving to them and calling for them to be like. Most of us reflect energies way before it's conscious that we do so. Mirror neurons fire and inform your intuition way faster than emotion can be consciously read and communicated or felt. So of course, when you encounter good people, you will find them good. But when you find people whose temperament you consider bad, if you are good enough, if you are centered, if you are grounded in your being, if you are impenetrable and don't absorb their negative energy, again, if you are good enough and anchored to your principles and stable in your footing, then even those people who you thought were bad will melt in response to the grace you give them without them having to work to earn it. And then ironically, they work to earn it. Now let's extend this past just people into situations in life, problems, obstacles, things to overcome. Again, we can get into the debate about what is good or bad. But let's say simply, if pleasure is good and pain is bad, you can extend this to then, obviously, the pleasurable situations are good and perceived as such, no debate there. But the bad ones, the painful ones, the hardship, even that is good if you are good enough. If you meet each one of those as a challenge, as a boss to defeat in a video game, as a hurdle to jump over, no matter the height, then if your skills, your attitude, your approach, your planning, your strategy, your vision, if all of these things are at par or pushing at the edges, then there's no bad situation that cannot be turned to good. Nothing that cannot be changed, shifted, or accepted and internalized as a positive, even if it comes with its terrors and turbulence. Now, I won't end this without addressing the term good enough. Because if there is one thing this term brings up for me, is the exact problem that most of us have. We all have a good enough disease. None of us feel good enough. Most of us feel inadequate most of the times, like imposters, unworthy, undeserving. So if we all walk around with this deficit, it's obvious that there might be resistance in hearing this idea because we feel diminished, crushed by the bad in people, by the bad in situations, by the bad in us, by the bad in society, by the bad in life. We feel crushed. And to think that the solution to not feeling crushed is solving for the very deficit that makes us feel crushed in the first place only makes us lose more hope as we spin our wheels, and it distances us even more. It's easy then to resign and say, I'll never be good enough. I'm just not good enough. To which I usually short circuit my own thinking by asking questions. You don't feel good enough to what exact standard? Exactly. What are the ideas, mile markers, or indications that come to your mind when you think of this threshold of good enough that you feel below of? And in clarifying this threshold, that marked height, that minimum standard that comes to your mind, I'll share just a thought by breaking down the word good enough that I hope infiltrates and neutralizes this feeling you have of not feeling good enough. Good enough. It doesn't mean perfect. It doesn't mean extraordinary. It doesn't mean meeting the lofty requirements of success that come to your mind. If I gave you something to use and it just got the job done, maybe there could have been something better, more efficient ways to have gotten that job done. Maybe there are better tools or methods to tackle it. But if the thing I gave you got the job done, it would be appropriate to say it was good enough. It got the job done. Good enough is not something we need to fight to become. Good enough is just sufficient enough to get the job done. It's not necessarily something to write home about. So in saying that, we are all good enough because we all have inherent value. Nothing we need to claw and yearn for. Being great, that's a different conversation. But you don't need to be great to make bad into good. Just being good enough is good enough. I love you, family. Stay true always. I'll see you on the next show.